Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Charine John, and I work in the communications team at the London International Development Centre. For those of you who may not be very familiar with the work that LIDC does, we are an organisation that's composed of a number of higher education institutions and NGOs, and we specialise in interdisciplinary collaboration, focusing on difficult problems in the global development landscape. So we do this through a number of ways. We have a number of events, on training courses, we have ship programs, we organise seminars, we give training in grantsmanship, we help people set up projects, we're very active on social media, we organise a lot of events and seminars, we produce newsletters, we publish research, we highlight the work of our member organisations, and we foster collaboration. Very happy today to be joined by the wonderful Dr. Tahirih Danesh. Dr. Danesh is a passionate advocate for human rights. She specializes in human rights law. And some of you may have seen her speak at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. She joined our panel to discuss the influence that religion had on COVID-19 and other health messaging. And more recently, she spoke at our Women's Day event, obviously about women, gender, power, with a particular focus on women's access to education, which is something that she feels very strongly about. She's a leading member of the Persia Educational Foundation, and she's been the driving force behind a fantastic festival of short films produced by Iranian women for the world to see. Her work brings the dynamism and excellence of women struggling in Iran to global attention, and we're very grateful that she's made time in her busy schedule to join us today. So today I'm going to ask Tahirih a few questions about the upcoming festival, why it's happening, what was the motivation for it, where it will be, what we can expect to see. It's next month, so we'll be sharing this interview widely, and we hope you will do too. We'll also be posting about it on LIDC socials and our website, which is where you can find out more about the work that LIDC does and join us if you'd like to. You're very welcome to. So Tahirih, I am going to start by asking you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how it is that you came to do the work that you are doing, and then tell us a bit about Persia Education Foundation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Charine. I'm incredibly grateful. I really appreciate you for everything that you do in the world of development, and for leaving a slice of your amazing contributions to the world of development in conjunction with Persia Education Foundation. I'm humbled to be in your presence and to have the opportunity to speak about this first ever festival of its kind with your distinguished audience and followers throughout the world. So as you kindly mentioned, I help with the day-to-day affairs of Persia Educational Foundation. This is an organization that is a registered charity here in the United Kingdom and is entirely focused on the theme of education and its role in development of our collective consciousness and advancement of civilization in terms of both technical education of the younger generation, but also through public service and the ways in which generation after generation we seek to excel ourselves and our societies and give back to the communities where we come from. So that's the modus operandi of Persia Educational Foundation. We offer a number of scholarships. We also provide educational spaces where we talk about and learn about important topics. I came to Persia purely by luck, through getting to know about the work of individuals who founded this wonderful organization years ago in 1997, and had been informally actually contributing to the cause of education and development of Iranian descent students for years. But when we came together, we thought about formalizing the services that the founders of the foundation were offering the community through Persia. And so since 2016, I've had the wonderful fortune of working with an incredibly accomplished group of individuals who are part of our board of trustees to enable Iranian descent students in the West, primarily in the UK, to continue their technical education, but also to espouse a culture of contributing to our community through service and innovation, really, in advancing civilization. So that spirit of service is pronounced in everything we choose to do. We maintain a very niche, focused, and defined area of activity, because we very much value the manner in which we offer our services to the community. It's not so much about making noise as it is about real impact. And sometimes real impact is more silent than noisy. That has meant that our approach of sort of assuming a position of, an ocean always places itself below everyone else. And that's why things flow to it. The foundation assumes the same position. We see ourselves below our community and our collaborators, and we want to be of service to them. And so wonderful things flow to us. One of them has been this fantastic festival. A wonderful festival director, Jess Matthew Cooper, who runs Film Buzz Festival, approached us through a dear friend and said, we've set out a call for contributions, and we've received a lot of contributions from Iranian women filmmakers. Could we do something? We want to do something with an organization that really cares for the community. And we said, yes, we'll do everything we can, in particular at this point in time with the woman life freedom movement, Zan Zendegi Azadi, or in Kurdish, Janjian Azadi, to create a space where these incredible contributions by Iranian women filmmakers about social and economic dynamics, cultural dynamics of Iranian society of today can reach a world audience, starting with here in the UK, in London. And so we began to join forces. We're grateful that Film Buzz wanted to offer this as a form of service. And of course, Persia committed its own services and resources on pro bono basis to bring this, to make this festival happen. And we brought together all sorts of resources that were necessary to make this happen. And so on the 23rd and 24th of June this month, we will be holding 2 screenings. There are 4 hours of short films that have been donated. So we've sort of grouped them in 2-hour screenings on Friday and Saturday, June 23 and June 24 at Curzon, Victoria. And we're also incredibly, incredibly grateful to a German Iranian star who despite many accomplishments and awards, has maintained a humble posture to her craft and her community. And the spirit with which she has joined us has resonated deeply with what we have wanted as the seed of this festival. And so, dear Nicole Ansari Cox will be the celebrity guest of a VIP reception we're also holding on Friday, June 23rd, after the screening of the first portion of the short films, to bring together really a group of individuals, conscientious citizens and decision makers, to examine the impact of not only the current movement that started in Iran in September 2022, but to reflect on the dynamics that have impacted Iranian women since the inception of the Islamic Republic.
May I just interrupt for a second here? Because I think sometimes when we talk with other activists and academics, we sometimes assume knowledge on the part of our audience. And I would just like us to go a little bit further back. One of the things that I don't want to forget to let our audience know is that the PEF, the Persia Education Foundation, actually organizes scholarships for, as you say, Iranian, for women of Iranian descent. And I know of at least two, one of which is in honor of Mahsa Amini. So I am hoping that we can revisit what happened, the tragic events of late 2022 that in which Mahsa lost her life, why this happened, what it has sparked, and how it's related to the decision to hold this festival. Is that possible?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Iran has a very intense, let's say, approach to human rights violations, and remains one of the top states with the highest rate of executions worldwide for a number of years, if not continuously. And as I was mentioning earlier, has been in the practice of placing women as second-class citizens according to its constitutional articles and its general policies and laws for the past 44 years. One of the earliest instances that globalized the mistreatment and execution of young women was in June of 1983, when a group of 10 women were executed in Shiraz, Iran. And one of these women was actually a 17-year-old girl who, by today's standards, following the establishment of the Convention on the Rights of the Child in early 1990s, which has become the most accepted or ratified international document in the world of human rights and the mechanisms of the United Nations. So long before the Convention on the Rights of the Child came into existence, the case of this young 17-year-old girl executed in Shiraz in June 1983 globalized the maltreatment of young girls in Iran. And later on, of course, in 2009, when we had a massive uprising again in Iran, where for the first time, we started to see the beginnings of different segments of this multi-ethnic and multi-belief population come together and stand up for their shared humanity, for their shared suffering. That same year, the former Miss Canada and Miss World runner-up, Nazanin Afshinjam, who helped to establish an organization called Stop Child Executions. She and I, through a wonderful UK think tank that I've been affiliated with for a long time, the UK Foreign Policy Center, we published the world's first report on child executions. And in that report, we highlighted the particular mistreatment of women, young women in Iran. And we spoke about, we featured the case of Mona Mahmoudnejad, the 17-year-old girl who was hung in Shiraz in 1983. Fast forward to last year this time, when different segments of the Iranian population were beginning to experience an intensification of human rights violations and abuse. So around June, July last year, in particular, the country's largest non-Muslim population, the Baha'i community, started to issue statements saying, we're beginning to experience patterns of human rights violations that are disconcerting and alarming. And that kind of fell on deaf ears again, which internationally has been a pattern to a large extent, unfortunately, in the case of Iran in particular. And in September 2022, so a few months after the Baha'is were beginning to make noise about what's going on in Iran, you have to remember at the time we were absolutely overwhelmed with what was going on with women in Afghanistan. So, decision makers and policymakers were consumed with what, Taliban were doing and are doing to women in Afghanistan. So then suddenly on September 16, was when we experienced the birth of this new phase of revolutionary zeal in Iran. A young girl named Mahsa Amini, as is the case with many young Iranian women, or women in general, had been detained by morality police because of where her scarf, her hijab, was positioned on her head. During her detention and interrogation, she had been physically abused. This then, after her mistreatment, led to her losing consciousness and dying as a result of the physical attack on her body and the injuries she had suffered to her head in particular. And this sort of acted as the ignition of this new phase of revolutionary zeal and Iranian women's movement, which isn't just about women's rights, it's actually about human rights in general. And we've been facing, a massive uprising, not only in Iran, but for the first time, you're seeing concerted efforts throughout Iran and in 100, 90, 95, 160, 140, depending on what weekend of the year you're looking, different cities around the planet where Iranian diaspora, the Iranian nation, are demonstrating, meeting with decision makers, making all the noise that we can, grabbing attention, speaking truth to power, and seeking a real change in the situation of human rights in Iran, which has geopolitically significant impact on the situation of human rights in the MENA region, be it Yemen, be it Bahrain, be it Kuwait, be it Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries, maybe north of Iran, in some of the Caucasus, in Turkey, Syria, Palestine, so on and so forth. And then you see the influence of Iran's discriminatory policies actually all the way to South and Central America, for instance, in countries such as Bolivia and Venezuela. So that in a nutshell is what's my understanding of what's going on.
Thank you very much for that quite comprehensive response, Tahirih. I think it's important, first of all, just to, for the purpose of clarification, you mentioned the MENA region, which stands for the Middle East and North Africa, so a number of countries there where activists are taking up the cudgel, if you like, in a number of different ways to fight for the rights of women to have basic human rights. And I think one thing that stood out for us specifically with regard to Iran is the fact that while Mahsa Amini's death sparked the protests and gave a number of young women, particularly women who are au fait with technology, who've been able to see the possibilities that should be open to them, given them the courage to go out and protest. But they haven't done that in isolation. There's been people ranging from oil workers, universities, and people with little or no education who've come out risking their lives to protest for really rights that most people would take for granted. And I think one of the very distressing things has been the rate at which the Islamic Republic of Iran's judiciary has hastened to slaughter protesters, not only while they're in the act of protesting, but is picking up people, torturing confessions out of them. And we have some very, very young people. So today is the 1st of June. And yesterday there was a wave of publicity around the planned execution of a 22-year-old young man with learning difficulties. Often there is little or no evidence of them having committed any crime whatsoever. But the determination with which the regime is persecuting opponents and perceived opponents is aimed at terrifying people into silence. So here I want to come back to the film festival that's taking place later this month, as you said, 23rd of June. So the Friday and the Saturday start on the Friday evening, and then you have a continuation on Saturday morning. What I'd like you to talk about now is the people who are making these films. What are the challenges that they face in making these films? What kind of films can we expect to see? And for those of us who have only baby Farsi, will it be accessible to people who don't have, who aren't bilingual, for example, titles? So tell us a little bit about the filmmakers and the format of the film festival.
Thank you. Yes, the films are made about a range of different social and cultural issues in Iran by Iranian women filmmakers. So they're productions that, sort of are not the immediate past, but, they sort of go back maybe a year, maybe before even Mahsa Amini's unfortunate induced death in custody. So they talk about different challenges that the Iranian society is facing at this time. They are in Persian, but they have subtitles. So they're fully accessible to an English-speaking audience, which is, good since it's happening in London.
I'm going to interrupt you just a second. I think it's very diplomatic of you to refer to Mahsa's death as being induced. But we know she was murdered, so we'll just say her murder. She was brutally murdered. From what we understand, the reports are that she literally, and often women working for the Islamic regime can be party to these violent attacks. Her head was literally banged on the inside of the vehicle in which she had been arrested, and that the regime then tried to threaten her family into silence and sent out disinformation saying that her death was a result of a childhood illness that she'd had, when she was actually brutally murdered. So I just think it's okay to not be diplomatic about that, but to actually let people know what's really happening. What's, the extent of the violence is very hard to convey. So the risks that the women who are making the films that are going to be in the festival, are taking, they're very courageous women. We already know that the reporters who reported on Mahsa Amini's death are themselves now being prosecuted in court. So we need people to watch these events and just imagine if it was your sister, your mother, your best friend, your son, because as you say, children are being killed. We need people to know the extent of the brutality. There's basically nothing they won't do in order to try and quell opposition. And what's courageous about this festival is the fact that these women are defying this violence and these threats in order to have their voices heard. So forgive me for having interrupted you, but I just wanted to be, from an LIDC perspective, to be very blunt about that. So thank you.
No, thank you. Not at all interruption. This is a discourse, and absolutely you're contributing to this beautifully. But I guess it's my legal training whereby I have, it's like you also see a case where the person is ending to say there's alleged murder until it's actually proven, right? So it's the same thing that if you notice, I said induced death in custody. In other words, it was definitely a result of what happened to her while she was in care of the state officials. But of course, there has to be, until, again, coming from a legal sort of approach, until there's been, if there could ever be independence of the authorities involved to properly investigate and hold accountable those who are responsible for what is a murderous act. Same thing, we have a range of cases going way back to 1979 of individuals, including, my own loved ones, who were kidnapped. And we know we have enough evidence and testimony and eyewitness accounts to know that they were taken and executed. But because this has never been investigated and, the case has never been finalized, we still refer to them as those. We used to say kidnapped. These days, the legal terminology is to say they face enforced disappearance and are presumed dead. But really, they were executed. If you go with what we know about it, they were taken in hiding and they were killed and buried in unknown spaces. So you're absolutely correct in what you said, but to keep up with a certain level of benefit of doubt and objectivity, I say induced death while in custody, because there's also the other phenomena of death in custody when the person has never been released from the time that they were taken until their death, and that's death in custody. But in her case, because she had been released, it's induced in custody, while in custody. So yes, there really is this is a horrendous case. And like you were saying, we need to watch the short films that have been done by women to understand the dynamics, because it could be our daughter, sister, whatever. We have to realize that actually here in the United Kingdom, the Islamic Republic of Iran maintains a very active presence. In fact, just this last week, finally, human rights defenders were able to put a stop to the operation of charities that exist in this country and receive funding from various sources in this country to, in essence, help deliver what they call soft terrorism here in the UK. So it may be that a UK citizen may be impacted by the same policies, or rather similar policies and similar acts of aggression that have impacted the lives of so many innocent individuals on streets and in detention centers of Iran. So it is absolutely necessary for us to inform ourselves, educate ourselves about what the Islamic Republic is up to in the country, again, because the Constitution, the preamble to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic sees itself as not only a governing body for Iran, but as an agent to import the same approach to human rights for individuals around the world. And in fact, they do review the preamble and the Iranian Constitution, Islamic Republic Constitution, because it does call for the establishment of similar standards outside of Iranian borders. So it's absolutely essential for the average UK citizen to become familiar, come and see these films, learn more about what's been happening since the induced death of Mahsa Amini, to understand beyond her case the hundreds of young Iranians that have been taken, tortured, raped, drugged, and killed mercilessly. And they continue to this day. We have groups after groups that formally or informally are taken and executed and are buried, by the authorities without any rights. And in some cases, some of the minorities refuse burial rights of their loved ones. So we're starting, for that reason, as well as the immense economic pressure that individual Iranians, particularly marginalized populations, are facing, we're starting to see patterns where people don't have any way of burying their loved ones. So it's difficult to maintain them while they're alive because you can't afford food, you can't afford provisions that are necessary for life. So you have, an increase in the rate. Just before I joined you, I was in another TV interview where we were talking about the situation of women and the increased rate in child marriages, in honor killing, in all sorts of abuse towards women. That is a direct result of the economic apartheid that exists in Iran. And this is something that we're beginning to see well past the point of someone's death, where individuals can't even afford to bury their loved ones, or are not permitted in some cases, including many of these executions that are being carried out, to bury their loved ones properly.
Thank you very much for that, Tahirih. Are you able to share with us at this point some examples of who the filmmakers for this festival will be, and the type of films that we will be able to see on the 23rd and 24th of June?
Well, the identity of the filmmakers will not be discussed for security reasons. But they are done by Iranian women who are filmmakers in Iran, who've been, Iranian film and cinema have raised and elevated standards worldwide for at least 2-3 decades, if not all 4 decades. And so they're excellent films. They're deeply meaningful and significant. They look at issues around poverty. They look at issues around caring for the elderly. They look at issues such as education. As I mentioned, a range of economic and social issues that are impacting the lives of Iranians. And they're so touching. They're so moving. They're incredible examples of filmmaking and documentaries and storytelling that no words can describe them. The best thing to do is to come and see it. And as I mentioned, we have 4 hours worth of short films. So 2 hours will be screened on Friday between 3 to 5 o'clock on Friday, June 23rd. And then the remaining 2 hours will be on Saturday morning. 10 to 12 a.m. They will be at Curzon Victoria, Curzon Cinema. Information about purchasing tickets for the screenings, as well as the VIP reception with our wonderful celebrity guests, Nicole and Sari Cox, are available on the Persia website, but also on Eventbrite. It's public. Anyone can buy tickets and attend the either one of the events or all three of them. All the monies raised in honor of the donation that Iranian women filmmakers have made to the festival, all the monies raised will be collected for a special fund, scholarship fund we have established, which you kindly mentioned in the beginning, in honor of this young woman, Mahsa Amini, who was killed in September 2022. So donations are welcome. Even if individuals cannot attend the screening, they're more than welcome to contribute to this fund. As you kindly mentioned, Persia has a number of funds. One of them is specifically for women, which was established a few weeks after the untimely death of Professor Mirza Khani, who won the Fields Medal in mathematics. And then we have another one that is established in the name of one of the co-founders of the foundation, Mr. Ansari. And that is a scholarship for human rights and public service. It's open to female and male students. And now we have the Mahsa Amini, Mahsa Amini scholarship that we have established. And we have one other scholarship that we're in the process of setting up in conjunction with a wonderful university in the United States to enable Iranian descent students from anywhere in the world who may want to go and study there. Our scholarships are open to Iranian descent students in the United Kingdom, but also throughout Europe and any internationally accredited university. So this last year in December, we gave a scholarship to a student at Central European University situated in Vienna, Austria. And the same thing with our Mahsa Amini scholarship. We'll be more than happy to support students who are studying at any internationally accredited and recognized university in the West.
Thank you so much, Tahirih. So just for the benefit of our audience, I know a couple of times you've said Persia, and just to clarify that by that you mean Persia Educational Foundation.
That's right.
You know, Persia the country. Or
Persia the country doesn't exist. Yeah. But yeah, Persia Educational Foundation, short we call Persia, yes.
So tickets are available via Eventbrite. LIDC will certainly be publicizing that on our socials, on our website, and we'll upload this video to YouTube and we will be sharing it. Thank you so much for providing the context against which these films have been made. Thank you for discussing the challenges, but more than anything, thank you for the inspiration. We know that it's a very, very difficult time for anybody working on human rights, particularly, as you've mentioned, countries in the MENA region, but specifically Afghanistan and Iran, and women in those countries face such terrible obstacles. And really, it is down to not just people in the diaspora, but anyone who loves freedom to really come together and do what we can in order to support our sisters, because unless we change things, nothing will change, and in fact it's likely to keep getting worse. We've seen, you know, news of apparent gas leaks. You know, footage has reached us of girls going to school fainting and having to be dragged away from schools, and nobody, it's a bit of a mystery as to why these gas attacks are happening. We know that several young women have been shot. We know that people accused of being protesters or even reporting on the news are being arrested, and some are facing execution. So what they're going through is really terrible, and it's very commendable that Iranian women have taken the risks that they have to share their creative process to educate people who may not have been to Iran. Because despite all of this, Iran remains a beautiful place with a wonderful culture, rich education, amazing history. And it's so important that we honor that as well, and that we honor the memory of people like Mahsa Amini. And thank you so much for what the Persia Education Foundation is doing to encourage Iranian women and girls and to further the cause of their education. So I will give you the last words before we wrap up this interview. Yes, on behalf of everyone at the London International Development Centre, thank you so much, Dr. Danesh, for being one of our allies and for spending time talking to me today. So final words from you, please.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate this opportunity. Yes, absolutely. We really value not only what Iranian women have been going through, but also Iranian men who have been killed in this process. And we remain focused on educational opportunities because we feel the cultural framework and bedrock that is necessary for transitioning to towards social justice is most possible through education. We look at the example of South Africa. Of course, this is one example where in comparison with the case of Rwanda or former Yugoslavia, you see a different approach to retribution and to accessing justice. And it was only possible because of the cultural dynamics that exist in South Africa. So with that in mind, we remain focused on promoting the educational framework through which we're able to access our rights, democracy meaningfully and sustainably. And with that comes a development oriented approach to everything we do as individuals and as families, organizations, individuals, institutions, and communities that are part of this particular space. So we really are grateful for everything that you're doing at LIDC, and we hope to collaborate closer and closer with you during the coming months and years. Thank you again for doing this.
And I guess before we end this interview, should of course mention Jessie and the team at Buzz Films. They're excellent curators. We know that they'll curate an excellent festival. You've got experts working with you. So it promises to be a wonderful weekend, even if you're not into the quote unquote politics, just for the creative side and the networking side. And as a member of the Curzon, I know they are lovely cinemas, so it's going to be a wonderful weekend anyway, let alone the fact that it's for such a wonderful cause. So thank you again, Tahirih, for spending time talking to us. And I look forward to publicizing your work, the work of Persia Education Foundation and this festival from today and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We look forward to welcoming everyone.